Hello, my name is Andrew and welcome to another Chill with TFC episode. In this series, we talk to interesting people with relevant experience and insights to help us learn from their perspectives so that we can create the life we love and manage our finances well. My guest today is from London. She's been living in Singapore for 5 years. She's co-founder of Sophia and previously she ran a VC fund for female entrepreneurs in Southeast Asia. Right now, she's focused on financial education and literacy for women across Asia, and she's building an ecosystem of women supporting women. Let's hear from Tanya Rolfe. In this episode, let's learn about the challenges that female founders face. My guest brought up a statistic that women-led startups receive just 2.5% of VC funding globally. My guest is a venture capitalist who used to run a VC fund for female founders across Southeast Asia. Find out which countries' entrepreneurs left an impression on her and what insights she has to share if you are starting a business as a woman. We talk about injecting diversity at different levels, including capital allocation, which is the investor level, and how diversity actually makes good business sense. Apart from running startups, we also talk about how to reduce the wealth gap between men and women through financial education. Tanya, tell us about your fundraising experience. What is it like working with venture capitalists? Because everything I know is from watching Shark Tank. I don't know how much of that is dramatized, but tell us about it in the real world. How do you do pitches? How do you do fundraising?
So I fundraised as a venture capitalist, as opposed to an entrepreneur of a startup. So a slightly different perspective, but I think it actually feeds into one and the same thing. So I was obviously a female VC and looking to raise funding for my fund from all of the usual suspects that invest into venture capital funds. And some of those were institutional investors and some were development banks and then high net worth individuals. So a broad mix of target investors, I would say.
Okay, so you are the shark. You're sitting on the other side of the table. I'm supposed to pitch to you to get money from you.
So there's the funny thing, right, is that on the one hand, I'm sitting there being approached by entrepreneurs to give them money. And on the other hand, I'd spend my morning doing that. And then in the afternoon, I'd go and try and find money for myself to invest into these entrepreneurs. I don't think until I really, walked that walk, did I really appreciate how it all sort of sewed together. And so, receiving lots of pitches, 20, 30 a day sometimes, a lot via LinkedIn and social media and word of mouth, and saying a lot of no's to people and I found that really hard actually. And you say a lot of no's, you say many more no's than you do, yes, let's have a conversation. Sometimes because the thesis doesn't fit, what the sector that they're working in doesn't fit your fund's thesis. The geography, we were focused very much on Southeast Asia, so perhaps they were in the US or Israel, etc. So there was a lot of reasons. And then, of course, there were a lot of reasons where you just can't see the rationale for the business. You're particularly, I remember receiving a business proposition for a pitch deck for parents of children at kindergarten. And I was at the time a parent of a child at kindergarten and I still couldn't understand the concept of the business. So I was like, oh, okay, this is not going to work for me as an investor. So you're saying a lot of no's, and actually you have to prepare yourself mentally for saying a lot of no's because these people have put their blood, sweat and tears into their businesses and they work tirelessly and believe wholeheartedly in what they're doing, as they should. And you're, in 5 minutes just saying, no, thank you. So you have to really work out how to say that elegantly and respectfully. And I always try to help wherever, even if it's a no on the investment, how else could I help? How could I facilitate something else that might be an opportunity for them? So that was the one hand of people approaching for fundraising, and also it was always we were only investing into women founders, so always female founders, and then. I'd spend my afternoons and evenings largely because dealing with institutional investors overseas, so I had time zones to contend with, trying to raise capital for the fund. And that was the most interesting thing I've ever done professionally. And I learned so much from that experience, both good and bad.
So your fund is focused on investing in female founders.
Yes, it was. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Was it more in the UK because you're from London, or was it in Singapore?
No, Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia,
Yeah,
okay.
headquarters in Singapore. And supporting female entrepreneurs across Asia and also Hong Kong and Australia.
So you were actually on both sides of the table, like you were explaining, because you also have to raise funds for your own venture capital fund. On top of that, you are receiving pitches every day. You're saying 20 to 30. And of course, this includes face-to-face, emails, LinkedIn, what have you, right? And there's a lot of pitches every day.
Yeah, they came at you from every direction. I would wake up and there would be 10 on LinkedIn, and then the emails, and then WhatsApp messages in Asia. And I don't know if the UK is like this anymore, but when I left the UK, WhatsApp was really our social connection. And I moved to Singapore, and it seems that everyone was doing business on WhatsApp. So the lawyer would WhatsApp me, the accountant would WhatsApp me, deals would come in via WhatsApp. And it took me some time to get used to it. And perhaps the UK's evolved in that way too. I'm not entirely sure, but it took me some time. That was another platform that people could reach out to me on and try to get some money.
And I assume that every founder comes in doe-eyed, full of promise, really, really believing in their product, but you have to say no to most of them because there's only so much funds to go around, right?
Yeah, I found that really tough, actually, really tough doing that because, like I said, people have put so much into their businesses, and it might just be that you're just not the right investor for them because of many, many, many reasons that's possible. But yeah, it's really hard because you're trying, and I believe that it's possible. And I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback I received and why we launched a fund for female founders was because females that were approaching us were saying, well, we go out to the traditional VC ecosystem and we get no feedback. We could go for 2-3 meetings with a VC and then they just go cold. They ghost them. And they say, well, we don't know what we've done wrong or how we can improve or any of this. So that was one of the things that I wanted to do differently in the fund, which was how can we communicate really, really well and really respectfully and eloquently with these founders, because actually it really matters, because even if you're saying no and you do it with grace, it actually, people don't mind that so much. It's ghosting people or just not giving decent feedback.
We don't want to be ghosted, whether it's in a relationship or applying for a job or getting money from VCs, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying that even if it's not the right fit, you have to say no, not necessarily because it's a bad idea, but it's just not be the right fit for you. And what you do is that you actually provide feedback or some form of help other than monetary.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that you've just done 3 investments into female health, and then the 4th deal comes to you and it's an amazing deal, but you're, okay, well, we can't put all our eggs in female health basket. We need diversification. So, there's many reasons. Timing, you might have just invested all of your cash that you have. It could be, there's so many reasons why. Geography could play a part. It could be stage. They could be too far advanced. They could be too early for where the sweet spot for where your fund invests. So many reasons. But what I did learn through the fund is that there is a huge amount of female entrepreneurial talent in Southeast Asia. And it's largely going untapped by the current VC ecosystem. So the opportunity is just huge right now.
Did you focus on female founders right from the start, or what caused you to focus on investing in female entrepreneurs?
When I came to Singapore, I started to make some personal investments, just me. And they got me thinking that we could actually, I could do this on a more full-time, focused way, and maybe I could get some other people like me, because Singapore's full of firstly, women, professional women with cash, both local and expatriates. There's a lot of expatriates here that are not working because they've come here with their husband's job, but perhaps they were lawyers, whatever, doctors in the UK, etc., or wherever they come from. And so I was looking around and I was, okay, there's an opportunity here. I think there's a lot of women like me that would be interested to do something meaningful with their money, meaningful being putting that money behind women entrepreneurs. I, very quickly decided that women were to be my focus, purely because I thought untapped meant opportunity. And I just had, as I mentioned earlier, a second baby daughter, and I already had a son, and I was looking at her at a few months old and thinking, wow, is she really going to grow up in a world where she only has access? Let's say her and her brother want to be entrepreneurs. There's 18 months age gap between them. They're going to go to the same school, they'll have the same opportunities, I will raise them in the same way. Does it mean that when they both graduate from university, one is going to say to me, Mama, I'm going to be an entrepreneur? And I'll go, fantastic, Maximilian, you go for it. You're going to do great things. And my daughter's going to say, Mama, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I'm going to have to look at her and say, well, Adelaide, you're likely only to have access to 2.5% of all venture capital dollars, which means your life is going to be incredibly difficult as an entrepreneur.
Is that a true statistic that you got from the market? Okay,
yeah,
so it's
that's a global
2.5%.
statistic. It's so we were around 3%. So females all over the world. It's a global stat. We're receiving 3%, and then COVID hit, and actually women have been unfortunately, disproportionately affected. And so, I think we're probably around 2.2, 2.4% of all VC dollars go to all female teams. So actually, I think in Southeast Asia, our stats, unfortunately, we don't have a great deal of stats for SEA, but I think anecdotally, I think we're probably in a slightly better position, but marginally, not materially. So I think that it was it looked to me like an arbitrage opportunity.
Mm. So it's a combination of your own experience and, of course, looking at your daughter, thinking about the world that she's going to live in. And if she were to choose to become an entrepreneur, the odds are stacked against her if you look at the 2.5% as a statistic, right?
And not based on her abilities, skills, experience, just based purely on her gender.
You mentioned there's a pool of talent in Southeast Asia. While we understand that the Southeast Asian market is very fragmented, can you tell us from your experience, what do you observe? Like, give us a few examples from different regions.
So I think that, Singapore did a great job to position itself to be the hub for the, entrepreneurial talent across this region. And so we're almost lazy investors sitting here in Singapore, because all of the best entrepreneurs from across Asia, across Southeast Asia, were sort of heading towards Singapore because money was here, investment was here. So great amount of talent here in Singapore, not always Singaporean founders, a huge variety of Vietnamese founders, Indonesian and Filipinos really stick out for me as fantastic founders. And I'll just pull out Filipino for one. The passion that I get from speaking with a Filipino founder, female founder, is just it's hard to beat. But before I moved, in my early days when I came to Singapore, I made quite a few investments into American founders in female health space again. And I remember thinking, wow, there's something so unique about female American founders, and it probably is the same for male or female. They have a very there is no alternative to other than success. There's no for failure isn't even, I don't think, in their dictionary. And of course that gives them a very laser focus and more likely than not success. But then I came across a lot of Vietnamese, Indonesian and Filipino founders, and I saw something very unique in them too. And particularly the Filipinos, so the passion and the determination and the fire in their belly just was overwhelming. Even just from a meeting, one meeting in a coffee shop, in a hotel lobby, etc. It was unbelievable. It just blew me away. And you almost kind of lose focus on what it is they're building and focus on them. And you just think, wow, whatever they're building is going to be a success, because this is what they're carrying with them. And if it's something that they believe in, which I think is half the battle for us humans, if we are super passionate about something that we're building, it's largely going to be a success because of that passion that you already, innately hold. So I definitely love backing the female founders from those particular countries. But the whole of Southeast Asia has got great talent, and like I said to you, it's untapped. So it's just amazing. I remember when I first launched the fund, I came across so much criticism about supporting female founders. Why would you do that? You're just ruling out, half the population. There won't be enough talent. I don't think there's enough women in tech. Why would you invest into B-rate founders? Because if the current ecosystem's not investing into them, it must mean they're not good enough. All of these, reasons, or it's very off-putting investing into women. You're going to find that really hard. Some really sexist, misogynistic comments, but also just some ignorant comments as well. And I think that I batted those off one by one at the time, but it really did show to me that the opportunity is huge, because these are the comments from the current ecosystem that we have today, and they can't see that opportunity. I think that's changing, actually. I think I see a number of VCs sort of trying to focus more, but I think where the problem lies with VCs and attracting female talent, and why we need female-focused funds, is that if you're a female founder and you're looking at, let's say, one of the top 3 VCs in Singapore, and you're looking at their portfolio, there are very few women. Some of them don't have any women in their portfolio. Very few of them have women in their investment teams as well. In Southeast Asia, 76% of VC funds do not have any women in the decision-making roles, so in their partnership team. So if you think about it this way, if you only have one lens, it's really easy to really just view deals in a one-dimensional way, and that doesn't include, women. Because to be honest with you, I think women are quite new to being innovators, to entering into tech, to entering into the finance world. All relatively speaking, we are quite new, and so it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, but you have to foster an environment that is going to attract women. So if you're a female founder, you're looking on one of these top 3 VCs and you can't see any women in the team, in the portfolio, how many women are going to start knocking on their door for funding? I think that it's not a welcoming place for women to go. So I think that the thinking is that there's very few female entrepreneurs out there that are investable. And I just think that that's inaccurate. I think that we just largely have one lens, and we largely look in one place.
It's like your daughter have you as an example or role model if she were to choose to become an entrepreneur in future, right? Oh, mom is an entrepreneur, mom is a businesswoman, and that's who I can aspire to be. But what you're saying is that because, we don't see too many female founders or female-led companies right now, therefore we're only looking at it through a very limited lens.
So I think the statistic is, I think it was HBR said, so the Harvard Business Review said that women that, VC funds that have women in the partnership and investment decision-making roles are 2.5 times more likely to invest into women entrepreneurs. And we only have, globally speaking, 2.5% of venture capital fund managers as women. So it's a tiny, tiny fraction of fund managers. So I think it's safe to make the correlation between the amount of funding that women receive as founders and that of the number, the percentage we have of female fund managers. And coincidentally, the stat is almost identical. It's 2.5% globally. So I think it just comes down to common sense, right? You must have diversity. You must have diversity in, we've proven that diversity in leadership teams leads to more profitability, for example. And everyone is striving to have a more diverse team. And I did a LinkedIn post just today on this because New York Times wrote an article about male investors versus female investors. And they concluded that, and they used Fidelity Investments for their data sources. And Fidelity said that men, the article said that men, have, the reasons men don't make great investors is that men have a lot of testosterone, and it means that it reduces their fear, and it makes them very gung-ho about their investment decisions. And of course, that isn't great. It affects people's judgment. And for women, they're saying, Fidelity say we're holding on to our investments longer. We're a little more risk averse. We're not as confident when we invest. So, and there are pros to both, right? As well as these cons that I've just pointed out. And so doesn't logic tell us that if we work together in equal measure, that we bring out the best of both of us, of each other, and we end up with probably a much better result than just your lens as a guy or my lens as a woman.
Let's say gung-ho versus conservative, and the studies are showing that men are more gung-ho in nature, women are more conservative in nature in terms of their investments. And if we only to look at one lens, which is the gung-ho lens, not to say one is better than the other, there are pros and cons in both ways of doing things, but if we only look at it from the gung-ho ambitious perspective, then we might be missing out on the conservative part of your investments, which could be important as well to preserve your capital, or to make sure that the business goes on as you would want it to be, and to make sure that your business goes on well.
Yeah. Well, it's actually important because actually one has been proven to be better than the other.
Oh, one has been proven?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Fidelity said they surveyed their investments over a 10-year period, I think, and they concluded that investments held by women were 0.4 of a percentage point overall more profitable, more better investments than the male held investments. So being more conservative, holding on to your investments for longer, doesn't make you a bad investor. And I think it's been proven as well. I think it was Goldman Sachs proved that female private equity fund managers are, doing better than male. So, but I really don't think that we should be. I feel like we're forced sometimes to point out these where we're doing better, or you're doing worse than us, or and it's not a man versus women thing, but we do have to say, well, actually, being conservative, which is specifically in investments, isn't a bad thing, because overall we're proving to be more profitable. So perhaps if we work together, imagine what we could achieve together.
So your mission is you see a gap and then you're trying to close the gap. How else are you doing it? Or what other things whether it's a society or is the VC pool of people in it, what do we need to do to help close that gap?
Okay, this is an exciting question. So when I was trying to raise funds for the fund and going off to investors and saying, hey, I'm a new female fund manager. I'm in Southeast Asia. And yes, I'm not Asian. And I want to invest into women entrepreneurs. I mean, to say it blew people's minds was an understatement, because fund managers in Singapore, say, for example, are Asian, male, investing into largely men. And guess what? I didn't tick any of those boxes. And I could just see this untapped, as I keep pointing out, opportunity. And so I, kept banging my head against a brick wall there with the fundraising. And everyone said, you know what, Tanya, we love what you're doing. Like, it's so awesome. We think you're absolutely onto the right thing. Come back when you're on Fund 2.
Okay.
Yeah. That old chestnut. And I, kept saying, and politely at first I was saying, okay, sure, thank you. And then in the end, I was so frustrated. I was saying, well, there won't be a Fund 2 because we need to get to Fund 1 first, right? And so we need you to back. And actually, when you think about venture capital, what is venture capital? It's about backing the underdog, right? It's about backing companies, taking a chance. It's risk. You're taking a gamble on these companies, and that's what we needed. And I actually, went into the Christmas 2020 break, really disheartened and frustrated that we were raising capital largely from high net worth individuals, but not any of the big organizations or institutions, even those that were claiming that they wanted to support women. Because I think that over the last 18 months or so, it's been, or maybe even longer, it's been very fashionable, very trendy to say, oh, we back women. Look what we're doing at such and such investment bank to support women. But see very little money where their mouth is. And so it was super frustrating because I remember thinking the stars are aligned and, we are going to just get so much money for this fund because we're the pioneers in this region. And I couldn't have been more wrong. And what I went into the Christmas break with was thinking, okay, how am I going to, where am I going to get this money from that I need? Because I have all of this, going back to my point, so many female founders coming to me with great opportunities. Where am I going to get this cash from? And then I had a bit of a eureka moment when I realized that women were the massive untapped pool of investors. And I started talking to my friends, my girlfriends, smart, highly educated women in professional jobs, a huge mix of internationals, locals, everyone, like just a real cross section of people. And I realized that, all of the women that I spoke to wanted to do something to support women entrepreneurs or support businesses that they want to see in the world, like build specifically businesses for women. But what they didn't know was, how do they do that? Where do they go to do that? And if you look at, going back to the thing we discussed earlier, finance has been very traditionally male. And it still is, and it's very male dominated, which means the products and services, like particularly wealth managers, for example, I imagine, that a lot of the products and the language that they use is largely to appeal to men.
Male lens.
It's the male lens. Yeah, it's male lens. And so women are, they're not flocking in their droves to go and invest their money in that way, hand it over to a wealth manager or a financial advisor and just walk away. That's not the women's, largely speaking, women's psyche. They want to know what's that money going for? Is it doing something to address climate change or female health or poverty or, something good with that money? And how do I get involved? How can I learn about what this is? And so I said, okay, friends, I'm going to run a workshop on an introduction to angel investing, startups, venture capital, how it all works. Because it became really clear to me that there was this huge gap in knowledge around, how all those things interrelate, and how that also affects the businesses and services that you and I and the rest of the world use every single day of our lives. And so I started to run a workshop, and I had 450 women sign up to come. And I was like, oh, okay, there's some appetite here to know, to learn. And it was amazing because I took women from zero knowledge. And at the end of an hour session, some women were saying, okay, where do I invest? And it was just 1 hour. And that was my eureka moment. Women want to learn more, and there's nowhere for them to go for them to do that. And women have so much wealth. They're holding 1/3 of the world's wealth, and it's increasing, specifically in Southeast Asia, at such a rate. And by 2023, it's projected that women will have 93 trillion, which is just, it's crazy. We have a crazy amount of wealth, but what we also have, I think, around 10% more of our wealth as individuals in cash in the bank compared with men. So meaning men are just investing more money more frequently, and women are just sitting on it, going back to that conservative point. But I also think it's not just that we're super conservative. I think it's that if no one's speaking our language and it's an inviting, welcoming place for us to go and invest, then why wouldn't you sit on it in cash? So the idea behind my latest venture is I want to address the wealth gap that exists between men and women, and increase our individual personal wealth by creating more female investors. And then the second part of that is to invest that money, to provide the opportunities and the place for people to invest into businesses and services that women really want to see in the world.
When you're talking about the wealth gap, you're not just talking about starting businesses or investments, you're talking about the personal wealth gap as well. So tell us a bit more about this gap. Let's go beyond businesses, let's go beyond entrepreneurship, and about this wealth gap they're talking about.
Yeah, so I think that two things spring to mind when we think about wealth gap. The first thing is that there's still a gender pay gap between men and women. And I think that has been in place for so long, and I think it's just going to continue to take time. And so if you think about it, that if men are earning more money, it makes more sense that they are investing more money, which is in turn creating more wealth. So it's a vicious cycle, or a great cycle for them. And for women, we just, we don't have the same amount of disposable income in the first place. So that's one challenge we need to address as a society. But the second point is that I think that when men and women, when we're coming out of our formal education and we're starting to work and starting to build our social networks and groups, I think that it's much more prevalent, much more common for men to chit-chat amongst their friends about investments and about deals and about their money generally. Where you put this, where you put that. And I think that largely men are getting a financial education through their peers. And I think that women just are not. And when that starts at age 25, it just gets bigger and bigger, that gap, as we get older and older, because as there's you've got the benefit if you're starting small investments or thinking wisely about your money at age 25 as a male, you've got the huge benefit of compound. You've got many years ahead of you to just continuously grow that and compound that. Whereas women, I just think it's one of those conversations that we're just not having with our peers in the same way. So I think they're probably the two biggest factors that lead to the wealth gap that exists.
Which is why we're doing this episode, more conversations to drive awareness so that people will talk more about it and therefore seed into their consciousness.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned that you ran courses and workshops, and then the participants had this moment whereby they realized, hey, how do I invest? How do I start doing things? How do you take them from point A to point B? What's the process like?
That is a very, very interesting question, because I think that the crux of that is the difference between what I can do at Sophia with women versus what traditional wealth managers can't do to attract women customers and clients. And I think that is, number one, I am a woman. Mm-hmm. So, it helps. And I'm surrounded by women and I understand women. And I also think that I have a great ability to, one of the things I enjoy doing and one of the things I think I'm relatively good at is storytelling. And so being able to take women who are going from, let's say they're starting with little to no financial knowledge. So perhaps they've got a fantastic job, very successful. They are an accredited investor working at LinkedIn. But what have they done with their money? Probably not a lot. And so the great level of education is already there. So ability to grasp concepts is there. But just there is nowhere for them to go to have things explained to them in a way that is very relatable, in relatable terms. How venture capital works. And we're all guilty of this, right? We all go along to seminars and things, and people start throwing acronyms around. And there's so many acronyms, you don't know what we're talking about anymore. We've completely lost the context. Or you don't want to ask what DBC means because, you know, everyone knows what DBC means. So you can't ask that. So it's I don't want to say safe place because it sounds very cheesy, but it's a place where we say, you know, we can say DBC. I mean, DBC means absolutely nothing, by the way, in case you're wondering. I made that up.
Yeah.
But, you know, we would explain, what does DBC mean?
I'm just wondering if the listeners listening, okay, what's DBC? Yeah. I don't want to look foolish, so I'll pretend that I know.
I'll Google that.
You know, that's what happens, right? When you throw in acronyms and you're afraid to ask. So,
Singapore loves acronyms.
Yeah, we love our
my
acronyms.
Goodness, especially for COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, it's about explaining things and not just saying, well, DBC means, and then just throwing a whole nother bunch of words out there that mean nothing. But actually saying, well, it means this, and this is how you would relate it to, you know, considering a startup or thinking about an investment or, you know, and putting it in, and people just go, oh my goodness, yeah, of course, that makes absolute sense. So it's not about dumbing down or simplifying. It's just about accepting that none of us got a great financial education at high school. I think the world over, we just skip this for some reason in our education system. And we're expected to just learn this all as adults. And the reality is that a number of us just didn't. In fact, probably most of us just didn't. And so it's just dialing that back and saying, you know what, you're not expected to know all of this. So come along and learn. And we will take you through, you know, how do startups get started? How do they think about raising capital? Who do they raise capital from? And what does that mean? And then when do angel investors step in? Who are angel investors? Where does this money come from? How does venture capital work? And when do they step in? And when do angel investors disappear? And then private equity and all of these things. It's a very easy concept to understand, but no one takes the time to explain that to people in a way that people can just get. So storytelling is a great way. And I was amazed by taking these women through this 1 hour course at I'm ready now. I'm like, okay, this is an opportunity.
So you've worked with female founders. What advice do you have for female entrepreneurs?
So I think about that from what's helped me the most and where I see women founders having the most success. And a few things spring to mind. One is network. And I think that men and women, I think we touched on this in a previous conversation, but men and women network in a very different way. And I think that women are sometimes quite shy about building that network and asking for help and saying, hey, will you be part of my team, my advisor, or even just an informal mentor, etc. So, but building your network of trusted advisors and mentors and potential investors, etc., having the right people around you is where I think a lot of men succeed over a lot of women, because we just don't do that. And when I see women do that, it makes all the difference to their overall success and chance of access to funding, etc. Now, when I say trusted, everyone is a startup advisor these days. Everyone wants to be involved in the startup ecosystem. It's very sexy. It's very, it's hot. It's where everyone wants to be because it's at the cutting edge of innovation and it sounds cool to be an investor. So everyone probably has some advice for you. So my biggest advice to female founders is don't take everybody's advice, because I remember when I started out and everyone had a different view, right? Even just writing my pitch deck. I remember sitting there for months and months and months writing this damn pitch deck, because every time I showed it to someone, they said, oh, no. Do it like this. Do it like this. No, do it like that. And you go round and round in circles changing your pitch deck every 2 days. Instead of actually trying to run your business, you're writing a pitch deck permanently. And in the end, I realized I just need to disregard all of this because it's just noise. And everyone's got a slightly different way of doing things. So you need to pick very few but solid, trusted advisors and listen to them and go with it. So that's probably 1 and 2 things I would suggest. Being bold. So I have a favorite quote that I put on all my social media posts, and I have it written on my whiteboard at home. But it's basically fortune favors the bold. Sometimes I change it to fortune favors the brave. It's a bit interchangeable, but depending on the scenario. But I think that women could afford to be a bit more bold in their asks, their fundraising asks, their asks for people to be mentors, for people to ask for advice from. I think that we're always so worried about troubling people and annoying people and and wanting to do it ourselves. I think that we should be bold in what we ask for. Be bold in, okay, we could probably scrape by with $100,000, but actually, we need $1 million. Well, ask for $1 million.
Okay.
And that's, yeah.
Any tips on how to network and how to be bold? How do I step out to network? How do I step out to be brave?
Do you know what? I don't think there are any shortcuts on this one. And I'll give you an example. So when I started out investing into female founders, even though I'm very confident in what I talk about, and if you ask my friends, they'll think I'm very confident. When I started to use social media, LinkedIn, for example, for posting for the business, I realized very quickly, if I just wrote a post that said, so this morning I wrote a post about the New York Times article that I mentioned earlier, and if I just wrote, here is the New York Times article about male and female investors, and posted it, one person might like that and interact with it. If I write a post that says, oh my goodness, look at this New York Times article, I completely disagree with it, what do you think? I think this, and this is my view, and and it might be controversial, it might not be controversial, but it's my opinion. It's giving you and the reader an insight into my mind and the way I'm thinking about this article or this topic, and that is where people interact with that comment. So you could argue that post was much more successful if I had 100 likes versus the one like of me saying, here's the article. But of course, that took me to get to a place where I had to get comfortable with my voice of putting that out there. Because what if I wrote, oh, I disagree with this New York Times article, what a load of rubbish. And then 15 people posted, Tanya, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you're terrible. Let's cancel Tanya Rolfe. Mm-hmm. That's what I was worried about. And I think that we're all very worried about things like that, putting ourselves out there publicly. Not necessarily just on LinkedIn. It could be in a room full of people where you've got to walk the room, etc. And the only thing you have to do is just take baby steps. Is just do a post, like using my example, is do a post with a very small opinion on it, and not particularly controversial, and build that confidence up. Because unfortunately, we do have to be bold. We do have to walk into that networking room and have that confidence to walk around that room. But you can't just do that on day one. So set yourself a challenge. Okay, so I hate networking. There's a room of 20 people. I have to leave this room today with 2 business cards and 2 connections and 2 people in my WhatsApp, right? And next time I have to leave this room with 4 people, right? I don't walk in and I say, there's 20 people in this room. I'm going to network the hell out of the 20 people, and I'm going to walk out and they're all going to be my best friends and we're going to go for breakfast tomorrow, right? It's not realistic, and that's going to give you some anxiety there. So it's about taking small steps towards that goal. So now you can read my LinkedIn post and you'll say, wow, she did find her voice. But it didn't come overnight. It took a year maybe of me kind of taking those small steps towards that comfort. So unfortunately, the answer is you've just got to walk through it slowly but surely.
Before we wrap up, any other tips for women in entrepreneurship?
Find your tribe, find your people, find and don't think about you need to meet every single investor under the sun. You don't need to meet every single advisor under the sun. Choose a small select group of people, stick with them, loyalty and and build those connections, deep connections with valuable, trusted people, I think would serve you well. And the last thing I would say, and something I've learned really the hard way this year, is that you reap what you sow. And I think that relationships are so important, and treating people in the right way with respect. And even when you're, like I said earlier, even when you're delivering difficult news, doing it in a respectful and eloquent way goes a long way. And you just never know when you're going to meet people again. So go through life kind of giving out what you want in return, because I believe that that actually will serve you really well as an entrepreneur.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this video. If you found it useful, like, share, subscribe, and feel free to leave your comments. You can also join our Telegram group, follow us on social media, and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Everything is in the description. For more content, check out thefinancialcoconut.com. We do have 3 questions that we ask every guest to find out more about you. So the first question is, what is one of your core life principles?
I just said it. Damn.
That was beautiful. Yeah.
That absolutely is my core life principle. I sometimes it tests me because I see people getting ahead who I think are not doing that, treating people in the right way. But I stick with it, and I think that is I'm comfortable when I'm doing the right thing for people, not just for my own personal gain. I think that comes back and serves me well in the end.
We also talked a bit about finances just now. So what is one piece of financial advice that comes to mind that you think should be shared more often?
Why aren't we talking about this in our schools? That's, I think, my biggest question mark in finance. When are we supposed to learn about this? And it would be like, we're not going to teach maths. We're just going to let you figure that out when you get to be an adult. We're not going to teach you English. Like, really? In fact, it might be worse than not teaching us maths, because we use our financial skills every day, or we should. And the less money you have, the more financial skills you need. So that would be that's why I'm scratching my head. And one day I'm going to start working with governments and education teams to get this on the curriculum more.
Our personal finance 101 module is missing.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My last question for you today, what is one area of your life that you're giving additional focus to?
My health. My health, because I'm sat here with a broken foot.
3 weeks. Tanya was telling me before the show.
I'm sat here with a broken foot, but also I have been a victim of COVID, and not in terms of I don't have COVID. Don't worry, don't panic. In that I have been drinking too much and eating too much and indulging too much, and so I'm now on a need to take care of your health. And also my brother in London has just become very ill. And so health for me is super, super important. I've got 2 small children I need to be healthy for. So I'm on a mission.
And we asked this question because apart from finance, apart from business and all the money stuff, we also want to know more about what other areas of life do we pay attention to, because it's all holistic, right? It's all part of a bigger whole.
Yeah, but physical activity, it's difficult for me with my toe. I'm a cyclist, and it's been very tricky. When I was in the A&E recently, I said to the doctor, it was a joke, but I said to the doctor, he said, you need to go home now. Here's your crutches and here's your cast. And I said, okay. I said, but I've got a cycle ride at 5 p.m. Is that okay? With a very serious face. And he looked at me and he said, no, it is not okay. You cannot cycle for 8 weeks. And I said, okay, I was joking, but okay. It keeps my the physical exercise keeps my mental health in shape, for sure.
So for those listening, take care of your wealth, take care of your health, take care of yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya.